Why are sumo wrestlers healthy despite being obese? You are watching Aurora Satoshi, the heaviest sumo wrestler of all time. He tipped the scales at 645 pounds, the heaviest of any active sumo wrestler ever. He reached this feat in 2017. The person in the thumbnail image of this video holds the record as the second heaviest of all time, and his name is Konoshiki Yasukishi. They don't share much in their sumo wrestling history, as Konoshiki was a much more decorated wrestler, winning over 7 championships and reaching a prestigious rank of Ozeki, a rank that is very difficult to achieve, while Aurora Satoshi has never gone higher than Makoshita, which is within the low rankings and are not even allowed to compete for the title during any of the 6 yearly Hanabasho tournaments for sumo wrestling supremacy. They do share one similar trait, however, and that trait is how healthy, even at those abnormally high weight and body fat percentages, they are. The advent of sumo wrestling was somewhat of a scientific gift in disguise, as for years doctors could not understand why sumo wrestlers, even though they carried weight that were in line with predictable chronic disease, would almost always show normal blood triglyceride levels as well as normal cardiovascular health markers. This absolutely stumped doctors and researchers, as the multiple epidemiological studies that exist show direct correlation with chronic illness, with a move from normal body weight towards obesity. However, in 1965, researchers M.J. Albrink and J.W. Meggs did a general investigation into the health of factory workers and noticed that obese men had healthy levels of triglyceride in their blood, showing that although sumo wrestlers were an easy group to predict this anomaly, this phenomenon was not exclusive to sumo wrestlers. In 1982, researcher Ethan Allen Sims coined the phrase healthy obese. This phrase was in reference to the unique individuals that appeared protected by metabolic disturbances attributed to obesity. They believe that there is simply a phenotype that can still carry metabolic health while being obese. It was determined that 1 in 3 obese people remain metabolically healthy. That's 1 in 3 people that do not suffer from the chronic illnesses usually attributed to obesity. Due to the perplexity of this phenomenon, even after its discovery, 30 years would pass without being able to establish criteria to define healthy obese. So a computer tomography scan, or a CT scan, was done on the most predictably reliable group involving the healthy obese, the sumo wrestler. What they found was astonishing. They realized that unlike most who increase into obesity and even morbid obesity, as is the case with the sumo wrestlers, they lacked little to no visceral fat, and all of their fat storage was subcutaneous fat, which means it was under the skin. This explained why they could be obese as well as metabolically healthy. You see, visceral fat is the fat that is internal and surrounds vital organs. It can even clog artery valves to the heart and cause organ failure. Visceral fat induces toxic molecules in the blood that can cause inflammation, which can lead to common obesity-related health issues. Issues like high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and even heart attacks. Why is that the case? How come a sumo wrestler, as well as others, be gifted with the body storing most of its fat under the skin as opposed to creating visceral fat? Well, take a look at Hakuho Sho of Mongolian descent with 44 championships, the most ever, and over 1,050 wins. He is considered the greatest sumo wrestler of all time. He is still active today and holds the highest position, ranking-wise, possible as a yokozuna. Just so that you are aware of the difficulty in reaching this near godlike ranking, since 1789, there have only been 72 yokozunas ever. That's 231 years with only 72 yokozunas. And to further drive this point home, currently there are only 16 living current and former yokozunas and 3 current yokozunas. That ranking position is near impossible to reach. And he achieved this rank at age 22 in 2007. He was morbidly obese then, and he is morbidly obese now, but suffers no ill metabolic effects. And all you really need to do to understand the differences between Hakuho Sho and a similar body type not involved in the sport is this. He is clearly agile, strong, and contains athletic qualities versus someone who is simply sedentary. That's the difference, their daily regimen. You see, sumo wrestlers are required to wake up at around 5 a.m. to start training every day. So they have to compensate for this amount of activity via their calorie intake, as to not lose weight and actually try their best to continue to gain weight, so as to not remove their advantage in competition. Since sumo has no weight division, the smallest guy must still compete with the biggest guy. So to compensate for this, their diets consist of high calorie dense foods, mostly a dish called chanko nabe, which is a protein-rich bone broth-based meal with vegetables and served over rice. A sumo wrestler eats roughly about 6,000 to 7,000 calories per day just to maintain and or increase their weight. So what does this do? Well, because of the high intensity in physical activity and amount of muscle mass below the fat, adiponectin is released within the body very consistently. And what adiponectin does is it moves glucose and fat molecules out of our bloodstream. Instead, it helps push all of the fat into subcutaneous storage away from the organs and right under the skin, where it is safely stored and provides equal metabolic health just like those who are not overweight. But although it is highly probable that a sumo wrestler will be metabolically healthy, that isn't always the case, as genetics play an important role and can override even the most dedicated to fitness when obese. This is called shokiri, which at first glance appears to be a normal sumo match, but then quickly rears its head with quirky antics. It is essentially comic sumo. The participants are actually low-ranked sumo wrestlers below the Miyagoshiri rank. Oddly enough, this performance is used to entertain and to show the rules of sumo by choreography, in which they break all the rules of sumo. It's a way of showing what not to do by doing exactly what they're not supposed to do. But this man, Shobushi, was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and this year he died after he fell ill after contracting the coronavirus. But just to show how rare this event is, he was the first active sumo wrestler to die since 2007. Generally, sumo wrestlers are healthy, and these numbers show that. But their physical activity is the driving force, because upon retirement, the physical activity that protected them is no longer there. And studies show that with this massive reduction in physical activity, their body starts to quickly and rapidly store visceral fat to dangerous levels. You see, their training has halted, but many times their eating habits have not changed. The dangers for sumo wrestlers come during retirement, as their average life expectancy is 60 to 65. That's 10 years younger than the average Japanese male life expectancy. If they do not change their eating habits, they can easily fall victim to illness related to obesity. It's not easy to do, but some wrestlers can pull it off. This is Konoshiki, and how he looks now since his retirement. This was Konoshiki when he was competing, which shows no matter the regimen or habit, any one of those wrestlers can break that routine and try to live a normal life after competition. So it's clear that metabolic health is not directly connected to weight and or body fat. You can live a metabolically healthy lifestyle while being obese, and in the sumo wrestler's case, even morbidly obese. I know, this is shocking. But it's also an oversimplification of mortality. Because if this revelation has you excited, let me reluctantly take the wind out of your sails. Are you ready for the curveball? In 2009, a study by Dr. Kuke of over 6,011 men and women using data from the 3rd National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. When describing this major finding, Dr. Kuke said this: individuals who are obese and do not have common diabetes and heart disease risk factors die at the same rate as those obese individuals who do. This means being overweight alone puts you at higher risk for dying, even though you do not have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or high blood sugar. This highlights the negative health impact of body weight alone. That's right. When assessing for all-cause mortality, healthy obese individuals die at the same rate as non-healthy obese individuals. You must be saying, what gives? Aren't they healthier? That's the oversimplification of looking at mortality based solely on metabolic health. You see, when one is obese, they still have to account for other issues: joint problems, skin infections, depression. They are also less likely to survive blunt force trauma, even with similar injury, because of various factors, such as longer transportation time from the incident to the hospital due to their weight. Also, it becomes much more difficult for a doctor to assess and treat injuries on someone who is obese, as finding, locating, and treating the problem is a much more difficult task. So please don't treat this video as a get out of jail free card to simply work out and overeat. Yes, it is true that the criteria that is used by sumo wrestlers can help prevent poor metabolic health even in the morbidly obese, but they do what they do for a purpose, and then must figure out a way to reduce in size to a more manageable weight and lifestyle. Quality of life matters. Essentially, those who tend to have a healthy lifestyle also tend to be of normal size, since it is pretty tough to continuously work out and eat healthy while simultaneously overeating aggressively. It is almost a dichotomy that is contradictory to your mental space of being healthy. Normally, the case is that we go one way or the other. But what this sumo wrestler phenomenon has shown us is that the true metabolic killer is a sedentary lifestyle. That how sedentary you are is truly the barometer for your metabolic health, and our weight or lack thereof is simply a byproduct of that lifestyle. Oh man, it's been a really long time since I've done one of these video essays, but I was itching to do one. One of the things that 100% intrigue me is the studies that have been done on sumo wrestlers and how, even though they are morbidly obese, they tend to be overall metabolically healthy. That puts into question all of the understandings that we have with obesity, triglycerides, fatty acids, and the reduction of those things. Many doctors and many pundits and people out there still believe that body fat is a direct inhibitor of your metabolic health. But it has been shown time and time again, if one has increased physical activity while still being overweight, they can create a metabolically healthy body. So it was so interesting to me that I wanted to go ahead and break this down for you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I know this is a little bit different, a little bit of a departure from what I normally do, but hopefully it was interesting nonetheless. And of course, as always, guys, I want to thank my patrons for my Patreon, and I'm going to go ahead and put their names right up here. And as always, guys, I'll see you on Sunday for another FAQ. Peace.